今日是2013年頭一個主日，
Today is the first Sunday of the year 2013.
我係將一篇信息傳到教會，
I'd like to present the message to the church.
我哋重新嚟看翻咱嘅教會存在是愛做什麼代志。
That we may once again reflect on the purpose for the existence of the church.
無論到咗一段嘅時間，咱幾時哦，咱未記得咱應該做什麼代志。
Sometimes we come to a certain period wherein we get confused about our purpose.
今日我嘅題目是來哦，咱大家起來建立一間健康嘅教會。
So my topic today is entitled, Let us rise up and establish a healthy church.
咱嘅經文是《使徒行傳》第2章11到17。
And then our passage is found in Acts chapter 2, verses 41 to 47.
一段真正熟嘅聖經，
A very familiar passage
但
of
是
the
咱
scripture.
重新嚟好嚟讀一段嘅聖經。
But let us read through this passage once again.
就阿力寫英文嚟讀嗬。
Those who accepted this message were baptized, and about 3,000 were added to their number that day. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved.
初期教會唔是一間完全嘅教會，
The early church wasn't a perfect church,
因為這個世界冇完全嘅人，
for there is no perfect person in this world.
所以任何一間教會都是冇完全嘅教會。
And that is why whatever church that may be, it's always an imperfect one.
但係初期教會是一間模範嘅教會，
But then the early church was a model church.
咱有當對這間教會學習真多學習嘅功課，
There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from this church.
因為當這間教會當喺建立嘅時陣，
For when this church was first established,
伊立咗一個真正好嘅根基，一個 foundation，
they laid a very good foundation.
就這間教會真正平衡嘅發展。
That is, this church had a very balanced growth.
平衡是教會真正重要嘅代志。
Balance is something that's very important for the church.
初期教會一個真正 balance 嘅教
The
會，
early church was a very balanced
伊
church.
是間敬拜嘅教會。
It was a worshiping church.
雖然講伊逐日同心合意，佇聖殿內面，佇家內敬拜上帝。
The Bible tells us that they met together in the temple courts and in homes worshiping God.
初期教會是間團契嘅教會，
The early church was a fellowshipping church.
伊講伊彼此交接、拼拼，先到攏做一個歡活共用、三級分享。
The Bible tells us they were together and had everything in common. They they sold their possessions and everybody shared together.
初期教會一間門道訓練嘅教會，
And the early church was a discipling church.
伊攏恆心遵守上使徒嘅教訓。
They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching.
初期教會一間侍奉嘅教會，
The early church was a serving church.
先講伊侍奉上帝，得到正面嘅歡喜。
And the Bible tells us that they were serving God and they found favor in the eyes of the
初
people.
期教會一間宣道嘅教會，
The early church was an evangelizing church.
就將得救嘅人數特別加互因，
For the church added daily to their numbers those who were being saved.
敬拜、
Worship,
團契、
fellowship,
門訓、
discipling,
侍奉、
service,
宣道，
and evangelism.
這個唔是教會個嘅真正重要嘅 function。
Aren't these the 5 very important functions of the church?
初期教會真正健康，因為開始就真正平衡發展這個人真正重要嘅工作。
The early church was very healthy because they started by having a very balanced development of all these 5 areas of
但係
church
一間
ministries.
健康嘅教會，
And if you want to build a healthy church,
有兩個真正重要嘅環節，咱需要注意。
there are 2 very important principles that we need to take note of.
咱需要建一個平衡發展嘅教會。
We need to build a church of balanced growth.
別話咱講咗一句話，
Rick Warren said,
伊講教會只要健康，教會就成長。但係健康嘅秘訣是平衡。
if your church is healthy, growth will occur naturally. Healthy, consistent growth is the result of balance.
平衡是成熟基督徒嘅記號，
Balance is a mark of a mature Christian.
平衡是成熟教會嘅記號。
And balance is the mark of a mature church.
保羅哋羅馬書也是咁樣講，
And that is what Paul said in the book of Romans.
羅馬書第12章第3節。
Romans chapter 12, verse 3.
我憑着所屬嘅運對你哋嘅人講，唔通看家己價值所應該看的，就照主所吩咐嘅人嘅信心，看得合乎中道。
For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you.
合乎中道 （sober judgment）
Sober judgment,
是嘟嘟嘅中間嘅意思，
meaning to say it's balance, it's right in the middle.
就叫做 balance。
That's balance.
教會需要平衡發展以各項大志。
The church needs to develop all these 5 areas in a very balanced manner.
每一年教會都有一個主隊，
Every year the church has a theme.
譬如頂年呢是 the year of worship，
Last year it was our year of worship,
咱嘅重點是敬拜；
and our emphasis was on worship.
今年呢是 year of fellowship，
And this year is our year of fellowship,
咱嘅重點是團契。
and our emphasis is on fellowship.
這是咱今年嘅 main theme，
This is the main theme of our church for this year.
活着為團契。
Live for fellowship.
什麼叫 fellowship？
What is fellowship?
咱學習之後，我哋建一個團契嘅生命。
We need to live a life of fellowship.
下年是 year of discipleship，
Next year would be our year of discipleship,
咱嘅重點是建立耶穌基督嘅學生。
and our emphasis would be to become disciples of the Lord Jesus
但
Christ.
是我常常提醒我嘅同工，
But I always remind my
唔
coworkers,
是講咱今年咱嘅主隊是團契，咱就忽略其他事方面。
doesn't mean just because our emphasis for this year is fellowship that we would neglect all the other 4 areas.
咱哋可能用較多嘅時間、較多嘅精神嚟備辦這個 fellowship 嘅工作。
Perhaps we may spend more energy and more time or focus on fellowship.
但是咱唔最忽略其他事方面嘅代志。
But we should never ever neglect the other 4 areas.
為什麼呢？
Why?
因為每一個人嘅運數嘅負擔都無相。
Because everyone's giftedness and burdens are different.
你若冇 balance 發展你嘅工作，
If you don't grow your ministry in a balanced manner,
你係真容易忽略其他嘅工作，
it is very easy for you to neglect all the other works.
看重一個工作，看輕另外一個工
You
作。
may focus on one and you may belittle the others.
比如講，你嘅運數是音樂 music，
For example, your gift is in the area of music,
你嘅負擔是愛建立教會一個敬拜嘅教會。
and your burden is to build the church into a worshiping church.
你若冇平衡嘅發展，
And if you do not have a balanced growth,
你嘅要求教會就需要每真最嗰最 equipment。
then you would require the church has to invest in a lot of equipment.
sound system 是最好嘅，
You must have the best sound system.
咱 invest 真最錢落去
We must invest in a lot of money
，because
in sound
worship is the
system.
most important in the church。
Because for you, worship is the most important thing for the church.
你若慢慢繼續發展落去，
And if you slowly develop on,
你係要求教會啲超過中間較重嘅、較重嘅，
you would require the church would spend more time in singing.
講道較短唔要緊，
And it's fine that if the preaching is shorter,
人都唔愛聽道嘅
because，people don't want to listen to
大家愛
preachings.
困呢。
Everyone sleeps when it's
超過就好
preaching.
些啊！
But it's fine when everyone's singing.
我同你講外國已經有教會超過10個分鐘，講道10個分鐘。
Now let me tell you, in overseas there are already some churches who sing for 45 minutes and preach only for 15 minutes.
如果你教會是無平衡嘅教會，
Such kind of churches are churches without balance.
是無成熟嘅教會。
They are churches that are not mature.
你嘅負擔那是團福音，
And if your burden is to share the gospel,
你喺教會做一個團福音嘅教會，
you would like the church to become an evangelizing church.
你若無平衡發展，
And if you don't develop on this in a
你
balanced
講團
manner,
福音是教會最重要嘅，
and you say that sharing the gospel is the most important thing
教
for
會
the
就需要
church,
團福音。
and the church needs to share the gospel,
到一個時間，
it will come to a point
你也是走錯去咯。
that you will go astray.
當我讀神學嘅時陣，
When I was in Bible
我一個
school,
同學，
I had a classmate.
佢是非常有負擔團福音嘅人，
She was a person who had an extreme burden for sharing the
是
gospel.
在戰爭問題熱心。
She was really very passionate.
After second years，
After her second year in the
你冇個讀
school,
落去，
she dropped out of
所以
school.
第三年佢 drop out。
So on the third year, she dropped
跟
out.
住你，
Why?
你講讀 讀冊無路用，
because she said it's useless to study.
了我嘅時間，
It's a waste of my time.
我不需要去傳福音，
I want to go and share the
佢離
gospel.
開神學院，
And so she left the
佢
seminary.
一間教會做傳道，
She became a pastor in a certain church.
呢間教會啊，
And for that church,
每一個主日都是福音主日。
every Sunday was Gospel Sunday for them.
我不去嘅教會講道，
I've been to their church to preach.
即個團契，即個教會嘅團契是拜六嘅，我當中是拜六最 fellowship 嘅工作，拜六嘅團
And
契。
this church had their fellowships held on a Saturdays.
每一個拜六嘅團契都是去華高半多條傳福音。
So every single one of those fellowships that meet on Saturday would go out and hand out tracts.
實在這個傳福音嘅教會，
It was indeed a evangelizing church.
7年以後，
But after 7 years,
佢離開這間教會，
she left the church.
重新去讀神學。
She went back to the seminary.
頂年以嚟菲律賓斜瓜咁我探過，
Last year, she came to the Philippines and visited
呢
me.
個我講會。
She spoke with me.
我問呢隻嘅門隊，
And then I asked her a question.
今日你嗰幾讀神學啊？
Why did you go back to the seminary?
伊無嗰幾海話，伊去辦理學堂，因為海話冇嗰收益咯。
She didn't go back to overseas Bible school anymore because the school didn't want to accept her
我講今日
anymore.
你嗰幾讀神學啊？
I asked her, why did you go back to Bible school?
你講過後悔少嘅早離開神學院，
And she said, I regretted for leaving the seminary too soon.
因為後來我發現一項大事，
For I discovered something later.
我完全未曉栽培新信主嘅人，
I didn't know how to nurture and care for the new believers.
我係講大無夠供應軍嘅教會嘅需要。
I didn't have much spiritual provision in terms of my preaching on the pulpit.
我親做一個老母，
I was like a mother
拯救事件啦，
that I gave birth to a lot of children,
但是我未曉教我嘅件啦，
yet I don't know how to train up my children
所以
well.
7年以後，
That is why after 7
我
years,
幫我嘅工作重新去讀神學。
I decided to go back to the seminary to
每一項
study.
物件都需要平衡嘅發展。
So everything needs to have balanced growth.
呢個運數呢是教導，是 teaching and preaching。
If your giftedness is teaching and preaching,
呢個負擔是喺教會當中念不上帝話。
your burden is that everyone in the church will understand and know God's word.
你若無平衡嘅發展，
If you do not have balanced growth,
你係將教會變成個戰爭度嘅 classroom，
you will turn the church into a very big classroom.
特你嚟加聖經，
And every day you would be teaching the
增
Bible.
加教會真理嘅知識。
You will increase the knowledge, biblical knowledge of the members.
但是保羅戰爭度提醒咱這項大事，
Yet Paul had reminded or warned us of something.
知識互人自高自大，唯獨聽心會造就人。
Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up.
有知識嘅人，
People with knowledge
自然咁樣家己比別人更高。
will naturally feel that they are better than
你
others.
哋看咪，你看咪，
Take a look at this.
你若三級做一個嘅時陣，
If you are together with a group of people,
神雅第一就會講嘅，
who is the one who speaks the most?
就是第有知識嘅人，
It is the one who has the most knowledge
因為伊聰明，
because he's intelligent,
伊知也最大志，
he knows a lot of things,
所以 dominate 佢嘅 conversation。
and that is why he dominates the whole
我
conversation.
知呀啦，你未曉啦。
I know that better than you do.
Listen to me, please。
So listen to me.
這個是有知識嘅人，
These are people with knowledge,
但是
but
你若無平衡發展，
if there is no balanced growth,
你只係自高自大。
you're going to be proud and haughty.
教會啊，教會，
Church,
咱需要將這個嘅戰爭度嘅方順平衡嘅發展落去。
we need to have a balanced growth of all these 5 areas.
即係教會真係戰爭係健康。
Then and only then will the church become
其
a
實這個
healthy
樣
one.
子做咩戰爭潛嘅道理？
Actually, this is no deep, no profound truths either.
咱小嘅時陣，
When we were still in
先知道
elementary,
艱難啦嘛。
teachers have already taught us.
工作是工作，鐵佗是鐵佗，休息是休息。
Work when it's time to work, play when it's time to play, rest when it's time to rest.
現在咱長大咯，
Now that we're all grown
咱
ups,
有工作嘅時間，
we have time to work,
咱有休息嘅時間，
we have time to rest,
咱有運動嘅時
and
間。
we have time for
呢個
exercise.
人嘅健康嘛？
And that is only when we become healthy.
唔那是安尼，
Not only so,
食咪是安尼，
that's also the same with food.
唔加糖金。
Well, if you can't eat or don't want to eat anything,
我哋講你係死啦，
if you refrain from eating anything, let me tell you, you're going
糖
to
都
die.
食，
But you can eat anything.
但係大項都唔通食少嘅嘴。
But then don't eat too much of anything.
健康真簡單，
Health is very simple.
平衡是健康嘅秘訣，
Balance is the secret of health.
包括你嘅肉體嘅生命及屬靈嘅生命
And。that includes your physical or spiritual
所以
life.
叫上帝祝福咱。
So may God bless us.
個人是安尼，教會是安尼，
That is the same with an individual. That is also the same with the church.
這一個平衡嘅生活。
We must live a balanced life.
第二，
Second,
咱需要建立教會個關事工生命嘅教會。
we must build a church with the 5 areas of ministry
這
life.
什麼意思呢？
What is the meaning of this?
教會有敬拜，
There is worship in church,
有團契，
fellowship,
有門徒訓練，
and discipleship,
有侍奉，
service,
有宣導。
and there's mission.
這是教會個關嘅事工。
These are the 5 ministries of the church.
但是，
But
咱唔嗱需要個關嘅事工，咱需要個關嘅事工嘅生命。
we not only need 5 ministries, but we need the lives of these 5
這
ministries.
什麼意思呢？
What is the meaning of this?
什麼是敬拜嘅事工及敬拜嘅生命？
What is worship ministry and worship life?
什麼叫敬拜嘅事工？
What is worship ministry?
要建立一個真正嘅敬拜嘅團隊，
That is, you want to build a very strong, very good worship team.
多領敬拜嘅人，
People who lead us in worship.
水準真真萬大貴。
They have very high standards.
有當多領全教會專心敬拜上帝
They，are able to lead the whole church in wholeheartedly worshiping the
敬
Lord.
拜嘅團隊 the members of the team，
And the members of the team,
大家真真萬大搞，
every single one of them are very skillful.
彈吉他嘅
Person who plays the guitar,
professional standard，
he's got a very professional standard.
拍 drum 嘅
Person who plays the drum,
professional standard，
professional standard.
呢邊都彈琴嘅 keyboard 嘅
And even those who play the piano or the keyboards,
backup singer，
backup singers,
都是真真 professional 嘅水準。
they've all got very professional,
Wow.
high standards.
好，佢哋只被超過盡真真 excited。
So that brothers and sisters will be so excited when
哇
we sing songs, when we
阿羅上帝，
worship.
阿羅上帝
You，worship God and you praise God.
這個叫做敬拜事工。
And that is what worship ministry is all about.
耶穌除了拜節嗱有敬拜，拜一到拜六，咱出嚟完全無敬拜
But。apart from worshiping on Sunday, if we do not worship in our homes from Monday through Saturdays,
你是伫教會建立事工，唔是建立生命。
you are only about building a worship ministry in the church, but there is no worship life in you at all.
敬拜當然重要，
Of course, worship is
但你小
important.
看咪？
But think about this.
全教會包括 worship team 嘅人及教會 members，只是拜節嚟敬拜。Monday up to Saturday，從來唔讀聖經，從來冇靈修，從來冇阿羅上帝，咱無也敬拜生命。
If the whole church, including the worship the members, they only but worship God on Sunday, and then from Monday through Saturday we never worship God. We don't have our quiet time. We don't pray, and we don't praise God. Then we are not truly worshiping God because we don't have worship life.
建立安尼款嘅敬拜嘅工作，
And that is not the kind of worship ministry that we want to build.
咱是建立你家己個人有敬拜上帝生命嘅工作。
For we want to build people who's got worship lives.
咱有團契，
We have fellowship.
但是咱是有團契組織，還是團契嘅生命。
We don't want to have just fellowship organizations, but rather fellowship lives as
什
well.
麼叫團契組織？
What is fellowship
咱有
organization?
團契聚會，
We have fellowship meetings.
咱有 men fellowship，
We have men's fellowship.
咱有 women fellowship，
We have women's fellowship.
咱有 youth
We
fellowship，
have youth
咱
fellowship.
有 couple
We
fellowship，
have couples fellowship.
咱有 small group，
We have small group
這是
meetings.
團契嘅組織。
These are fellowship groups or
但是
organizations.
咱需要喺這個組織裏面建立團契嘅生命。
But behind the organization, we must build our lives of fellowship.
什麼意思啊？
What is the meaning of this?
比方我是couple fellowship 嘅 chairman，
For example, if I am the chairman of couples fellowship,
今日你教會都有 couple fellowship 嘅聚會，
and today we have a couples fellowship meeting in the church,
我是 chairman 嘛，
and I'm the chairman,
我首先未去參加，
so I've got to be present.
但是 before 去禮拜等多及我係近朝還嘅。
But before I left for the church, I had a quarrel with my wife.
我花樣一件大聲，
Well, it was a big fight. We had a big argument,
結果太太生氣，
and so the wife was very angry
我要去。
and said she doesn't want to go.
但是我是 chairman of the fellowship，
But then I'm the chairman of the fellowship,
我首先咪就去，
so I should be there.
我就去咯個，
So I went.
都到牧師，
I see the pastor.
牧師講：你近超無嚟啊？
Pastor asked me, why is your wife not with you?
見喺呢度大志，
Oh, she's got some business to take
見
care
啊
of
咩
today.
讀課，
And she has to teach the children.
講白柒。
Well, this guy was lying.
牧師講好嘅，未有見，未有見，未有見。
Pastor said, oh, it's okay.
都參加聚會咯講。
And so he joined the service, the
見到呢
meeting.
啲嘅講案轉頭講喎。
Now the speaker was very good.
講什麼啊
What was he saying?
？Forgiving each other,
He was talking about forgiving each other,
loving your spouse。
loving your spouse.
哇，聽到好感動啊！
And he was so moved.
喺咩喺度去及近超講 I'm sorry。
And he had this desire to go back and say sorry to the wife.
好啦，講到啦以後
But after the preaching,
，fellowship 啦講，
fellowship time,
人問過：你近超冇嚟啊？
people asked me, where's your wife?
我是 chairman 呢，
Well, I'm the chairman.
我真係計講運記啊！
How can I tell him that I had
你
a
今
quarrel
時
with
冇
my wife,
冇
right?
example 啊嘛。
I have to set a good example.
打最大字，
Oh, she's very busy
見
tonight.
下個車
And the kids have an exam.
讀課，
So she has to teach the
我
kids.
講白柒。
Lied again.
我跟你講啊，
Let me tell you.
即係唔是團契嘅生命，即係團契嘅組織。
This is not the life of fellowship, but this is only about a fellowship
但是
organization.
你講牧師你制啊喎，
Now you may say that, Pastor,
我
you
嗱
know
咁你
what?
講我係近超運嘅，
If I tell this guy that I had a quarrel with my wife,
下禮拜全教會朗制，
next week the whole church is going to know about it.
再教會啊，
So church,
你仲有清楚什麼叫做關心，什麼叫做 gossip。
so you need to be able to clearly distinguish between what is showing concern and what is gossip.
人咁你講嘅大字唔是嗰啲傳出去嘅啦，
When people share something with you, doesn't mean that you can share it with others.
你講我係近超運嘅，
For example, if I had a quarrel with
哎呀
my wife,
個牧師了運嘅，
oh, I quarreled with my wife.
正牌見證，
It was such a
但是
bad testimony.
會團契啊，對吧？
But then we've got fellowship,
哎呀
right?
我靠 Alex，Alex
I called up Alex.
啊，
Alex,
推我幾多啊？
please pray for me.
什麼大字啊？
What is the problem?
見一個牧師了運嘅，
Well, I just had a quarrel with my wife today.
Alex 推你幾多，推你幾多？
And Alex said, I'll be praying for you.
誰靠我不冷？
Immediately, he calls another guy.
跨境及條牧師幾多？
Oh, please pray for Reverend Chung.
呢個牧師了運嘅，
Because he had a quarrel with his
個
wife.
學啊，佢表啲人聽到，係
And
死啊！
like they had a shouting match that everybody in the
即
building
係冷，個
heard
靠
about
不
it.
冷，
And then this guy called up another
跨
guy.
境對到條牧師幾多？
Please pray for Reverend Chung
我近
immediately.
超運嘅咯，
Because he quarreled with his wife again.
聽講嗰撒拍啦，
And we heard that they beat each other up.
個話講哪厲害咯，
And the more they talk about it, the more serious it became.
神地我嚟咯，
Sunday they came.
你 advisor 嚟斜瓜咯 ，advisor
Advisors, the council advisors came to see me.
啲牧師啊，
Reverend Chung,
什麼大字啊你啊？
what is the problem with you?
你講你個牧師了未好聲啊？
Heard that you're having some problem with your wife,
特別離婚啊啦，
that you're about to be separated.
對牧師唔等離婚啊！
Oh, you're a pastor, you shouldn't get a separation.
哇！我下擺唔加及你講威咯，
So next time I don't dare would share anything with Alex
團
anymore.
契唔是啊你，
That is not what fellowship is.
團契是你關心人，關心人就是關心人。
In fellowship, we show concern for one another, and showing concern is showing concern.
但你需要建立自己嘅團契嘅生命嘅教會裏面。
But we need to build such kind of life of fellowship within the church.
sometimes 有淡薄危險啊，take the risk。
Yes, sometimes there are risks
但
and
是
we
你
need
若
to take the risk.
你若冇按你追落去，
But if you don't do that,
你永遠只不過一個團契嘅組織啦啲啊。
we will forever be but a fellowship organization.
其實我係真真欣賞教會有佢嘅 small group 實在最真好。
Actually, I truly admire some of the small groups in the church.
Is
They've
that
done such a good job.
實在彼此幫襯、彼此鼓勵、彼此支持。
Truly, they are helping each other, supporting each other, and caring for one
有
another.
一擺有一個人講這樣大字，
One time, someone told me something.
如果牧師你知啊，有一個姊妹面啊，你俾創一個也重也大嘅手術。
Someone told me that, Pastor, that there's a sister in the church who's going to undergo a very major operation.
是真嚴重。
And it's a very major operation.
你推祈禱，
Please pray for her.
我當然推祈禱啦。
And of course, I did pray for
所以我
her.
office 我推祈禱。
I was praying for her in my
等我
office.
祈禱了以後，
But after my prayer,
我講我是唔是應該去看醫咧？
I felt that I should be visiting her.
因為你俾做一個也大嘅手術，
She's undergoing a very major operation the
我
next day.
應該去醫館小可看醫啫。
I should go to the hospital to visit her.
所以我就幫我咪嘅 家己話車去醫院。
So I left my things and then I drove all by myself to the
當
hospital.
我敲門嘅時陣，
But I knocked on the door.
冇人開門，
Nobody opened the
我
door.
敲一擺，
I knocked on the
Come
door
on, Uncle
again.
Man.
Nobody opened the door.
我東北等我家己開入去，
So I opened the door by myself.
看喺這個房裏面充滿着人。
Now this room, I saw the room was full of people.
這個姊妹小谷裏的多幾個小谷底下推幾多，
It was the small group leader of this sister together with all the members of the small groups. They were praying
我
for
我
her.
我先來是看喜啊不得了，
And I was extremely happy when I saw that
我
sight.
講我山香港唔免嚟咯，
I said that, oh, well, I shouldn't have come.
冇需要嚟啦。
I need that come.
等於幾多又看到，哎呀冇需要嚟咯。
And after they prayed, they saw that they turned around, they saw me that, oh, Pastor, you're here.
啊 yes，
I said, yes.
你講幾句話了以
So
後，
I had a little bit
我
of
講好，你
conversation
嚟
with
幾多
them.
節拜，過嚟
And
幾
then I
多節
said, let's
拜，
pray once again.
你喺度教咯。
And then I left.
團契就是安尼啦
And that is what fellowship is.
，small group 就是安尼啦，
Small groups are like that.
叫上帝幫助咱。
May God help
咱
us.
若是建立團契組織，咱需要建立團契嘅生命。
Not only should we build fellowship organizations, but we need to build fellowship lives.
第三。
Third,
咱唔需要建立門徒嘅時間，咱需要建立成長嘅生命。
not only should we have discipleship, but we need to have life growth.
門徒嘅時間包括真在 preaching and teaching 嘅 ministry，
Discipleship ministry includes a lot of teaching and preachings.
包括主日嘅講道，
That includes Sunday
包括
service
咱嘅
message.
discipleship classes，
That includes discipleship classes,
101啊，102啊，204啊，
classes 101, 202, 204.
真在咱基有創這個 equipping night，
Just like in the past, we had our equipping night.
這個是叫做團門徒時間。
These are discipleship ministries.
但係第一段嗰時，真係時間，讓咱嘅生命得到成長。
But the most important thing is that these discipleship ministries are going to help our lives grow
因為咱參加時間是增加咱嘅屬靈嘅知識。
because we join ministries in order to increase our head knowledge.
咱需要將這個知識用在咱嘅生活裏面，查出咱嘅智慧。
But then we need to use or utilize this knowledge into our daily lives so that they will become our wisdom.
智慧就是知識嘅運用。
For remember this, wisdom is utilization of knowledge.
有人只有知識 knowledge，
There are some people who only have knowledge.
但是沒有將這個 knowledge 用在咱嘅 daily life、daily living 嘅裏面。
They don't know, however, how to utilize this knowledge in their daily living.
所以咱無出嚟屬靈嘅智慧。
That is why we do not have that kind of a spiritual wisdom.
你省察你自己看咩？
Now you try and examine yourselves.
你嚟教會就會攞罪理咯，
How many years you've been attending church services?
聽到攞罪道咯。
How many messages or sermons you've heard?
Class 101啊，讀到204咯，
And you've attended classes 101 to 204.
知識真罪咯。
You have a lot of knowledge,
但咱嘅生命有進步喎。
but have our lives
你
grown?
若無將你所讀嘅物件用在你嘅生活嘅裏面，你嘅生命會長大。
So if you don't use whatever you're learning, the knowledge that you're learning into your life, then your life is not going to grow.
所以咱需要建立門徒嘅時光國，建立屬靈生命嘅成長。
So that is why we need to build discipleship ministry, but as well as building lives or growing lives.
咱需要建立侍奉嘅生命及侍奉嘅時間及侍奉嘅生命。
We need to build a service ministry as well as service life.
教會常常講咧，咱誒三級侍奉上帝，
The church always encourages us to serve the Lord together
因為侍奉主嘅人總是無夠。
because we're always lacking in people who serve
一間教會，
one church.
有20-30% 嘅人侍奉已經真好嘅教會咯。
If there is a church who's got like 20 to 30% of people serving in the church, then that's already considered a very good church.
真最高嘅是10% 嘅人起來侍
A
奉，
lot of churches have only 10% of the people who are serving.
10個人學晒90個人，
So 10 people are serving 90 people.
真艱苦。
That's extremely difficult.
咱哋教會攞最人侍奉啊，
What about our church? How many people are serving?
咱哋教會啊，
Our church,
平均 average 嚟講，平均嚟講，嗬，
on the average,
咱三等嘅崇拜，
we have 3 worship services.
下加有咱嘅 budget Sunday school，
And we have 2 batches of Sunday
都有一
school.
個 youth worship，
We also have a youth worship service.
隔壁有一間房，
Next door, we have a room.
這個是 大家樂 Sunday School 嘅房，
That's a room for the Tagalog Sunday
差
school.
不多有6-7個人地下敬拜。
And there are like around 60 to 70 people worshiping there.
所以 average 嚟講，差不多一個禮拜差不多1200到1300人嚟 CBCB 嘅
So
裏面。
on the average, we have 1,200 to 1,300 people who are worshiping here at CBCP every
嗱
Sunday.，
啲教會最近嘅人差不多是250個人左右，差不多250到300左右啦。
And
有3間教會嘅工作。
people who are involved in any kind of service in the church, there are maybe around 250 to 300 people.
所以差不多是20個嘅人，學晒70個嘅人。
So it's like around 25 people serving 75 people.
所以你需要較多人，咁問每一個人有機會實到嚟鬥三間教會嘅工作。
So that is why we hope that there will be more people who will rise up and help in serving in the church.
但是第一重要嘅，
But the most important of which
唔
is
是侍奉嘅工作，
it's not service
是
ministry,
侍奉嘅生命。
but rather our lives of service.
什麼叫做侍奉嘅生命呢？
What is our lives of service?
我用我一個叫做全時間侍奉做人做一個解釋。
And let me try explaining this with me as an example. Me, who am a person, that I am a person who is in full-time ministry
咱哋
serving
教
the
會
Lord.
最近，
We are serving
咱
in
叫
the
做
church.
full-time worker、full-time minister。
We call ourselves full-time workers or ministers.
説書，
If, for
我看
example,
我嘅工作是我嘅職業，
I treat or I regard my work as a profession.
我嘅 office hour 是9點到5點，9點到5點。
My office hours would be from 9 to 5, 9 to 5.
嗱，你超過這個點鐘，
And if I go beyond that number of hours,
教會嗌我最近需要學個 OT。
and if I have to work past that time, the church has to pay me overtime pay.
我 Tuesday 是 day off，
My Tuesdays is my day off.
所以你千萬唔得叫我最近。
Tuesday is my day off, so please never ever ask me to work on Tuesday.
所以 Tuesday 你千萬唔通破壁。
So you don't get sick on Tuesdays.
歹勢講我 Tuesday 出來千萬唔通發生什麼離開世界代志、無關嘅代志哦。
I'm sorry to say this, but please don't pass away. Don't die on a Tuesday. It's none of my business.
所以 Tuesday 未最死，未最破壁。
So you can't get sick on a Tuesday. You can't die on a Tuesday.
birthday 係最 birthday 係最
A birthday is fine.
係最炒幾隻。
Birthday, you can invite me over for
嗱，
dinner.
安尼
But if
我
that is
只
so,
不過是有侍奉嘅工作，我冇侍奉嘅生命。
I only have a service ministry, but I do not have a service life.
你你明白我講嘅意思？
And I do hope that you understand what I'm trying to say.
有時我咁我係教會同工講一句話。
Sometimes I tell the co-workers in my church
咱
something.
哋教會最近嘅人啊，
We who are serving in the church,
應該比教會兄弟姊妹追加嘅追。
we should be doing a lot more than the brothers and sisters in the church.
這唔是屬靈無屬靈嘅問題，
Now, this is not a matter of spiritual or not
這
being
是應
spiritual,
該嘅問題。
but rather this is something that is but necessary.
你看咪，
Look at this.
這個兄弟
Look at this brother.
有家嘅工作，
He's got his own
有家
work.
嘅生理，
He's got his own
呢個
business.
時間用真嘅時間管理家嘅工作。
He spent a lot of time managing his own business.
而最近以後，
And after he works,
佢用呢個時間嚟侍奉上帝。
he uses his time to serve the Lord.
所以我這個叫做全時間侍奉上帝嘅人啊，
So I, as a person who serves the Lord full time,
我嗱即係9點到5點侍奉上帝，
and if I serve the Lord only from 9 to 5,
我未配追這個人嘅領袖，
then I don't deserve being the leader of this guy.
我未配追教會僕人。
I don't deserve being a servant of
所
the
以
church.
啲教會最近嘅人啊，
So people who are serving in the
咱更加
church,
需要比兄弟姊妹追加嘅追，
we should be doing a lot more than our brothers and sisters.
這個就侍奉嘅生命。
This is what a life of service
其
means.
實你若有侍奉上帝嘅生命，
Actually, if you have a life of service to the Lord,
你心內自然會講係快樂，講係喜樂喺裏面。
your heart will naturally have this kind of a joy and strength.
感謝上帝，
Thank God
有機會侍奉主。
that I have this opportunity to serve God.
你省察你家己，
Now you try examining yourself.
你若侍奉主一段嘅時間以
If
後
you've，been serving the Lord for quite some time,
心內充滿着不滿，
then your heart is filled with discontentment,
充滿着怨妒，
filled with envy or jealousy.
充滿着批評，
It's filled with criticisms.
充滿着比較。
It's filled with comparisons.
今日呀你，今日見你，今日你，
Why is he like that?
今
Why
日
is
做
she
嚟
like
做嘅
that?
是我一個人做。
Why is it that I'm the only one doing all the work?
咱乃無侍奉上帝喜樂，
Then all the more that you will not have this kind of a joy of serving the Lord.
咱應該好好省察咱家己。
Then we need to examine ourselves well.
我已經失去侍奉嘅生命，只有侍奉嘅工作。
I have lost the life of service. I am only doing work, service work or ministry.
所以求上帝幫助咱。
So may God help
咱
us.
就建立侍奉上帝生命。
We need to build a life of service to God.
唔是工作很簡單。
It's not just as simple as doing a work or task.
信道嘅事工及信道嘅生命。
Mission ministry and mission life.
什麼叫信道嘅事工？
What is mission ministry?
當教會創佈道會嘅時陣，
When the church holds an evangelistic
咱就
meeting,
邀請未信主人嚟教會。
then we invite unbelievers to come to church.
當教會創信道會 mission conference 嘅時陣，
When the church holds a mission
咱就
conference,
沙急嚟聽。
then we come together to listen.
當教會無創佈道會嘅時陣，
But when there is no evangelistic meeting in the church,
咱就無請人嚟教會。
we don't invite people to come to church.
當教會無創 mission month 嘅時陣，
And when the church doesn't have its mission
咱就
month,
無關心信道嘅工作。
then we don't care about the work of missions.
安尼我哋教會，
Such kind of a church
只是有信道事工，無信道生命嘅教會
has。only got mission ministry, but it doesn't have a mission life.
咱就每一年嘅10月是咱嘅教會 mission month。
Every October is our missions month.
當更安排真侪信道嘅 report、信道嘅見證。
And then our co-workers would plan for a lot of mission reports and testimonies
因為照嘅追，
because it's too many, too
佢
much.
無可能地當中報告了。
So it's impossible for us to be able to report every single one of them.
所以我大概嘅 chairman 講，
So I told the chairman,
你無需要當中幫你10日裡面。
you don't need to plan all of these things and schedule them for
你
October
做你
only.
把你其他蚊就追報告啦嘛。
You can do the reports also in the other months of the year.
10日只不過一個提示那啲啊，
October is only but a reminder
可能就有人需要報道，
so that we may be reminded that we need to evangelize, that we need to do missions.
啊結果係跳舞咯。
As a result, they
啊，
understood
呢對，
and they said, okay, that's right, yes.
你聽我講一句話，
Now listen to me.
當教會能夠追究無需要創報道會。
When the church has come to a point wherein there is no more any need for us to do evangelistic
當
meetings,
教會有通追究無需要嗰種信道會，
when the church is able to come to a point wherein we no longer need to do missions conference,
正教會是開始成功啦。
then this church is starting to succeed.
什麼意思啊？
What is the meaning of this?
當正教會追究無啟明追報道會，佢哋這邊已經曉去報道。
When the church has come to a point wherein we don't need to hold evangelistic meetings, and yet brothers and sisters are able to share the gospel on their own.
當教會追究無啟明追信道會，教會已經曉追信道。
When the church no longer needs to do missions, and yet the church, brothers and sisters, are able to do missions work,
這間教會就是有信道生命嘅教
then
會，
this church is a church with missions life.
就叫上帝幫襯咱。
So may God help
乜記
us.
得咱唔係是建立事工，
Let us remember that we're not building only the ministry or the
咱
work.
需要建立事工裡面嘅生命。
We need to build the life behind the ministry.
今年是咱嘅團契year of fellowship。
This year is our year of fellowship.
當然，咱仍然注意其他4方面嘅工作。
Of course, we still will pay attention to the rest of the 4 areas.
但是咱用較多嘅時間、較多嘅精神嚟注意咱嘅 fellowship 嘅工作。
But we will be spending a little more time in focusing on our work of fellowship.
但是叫上帝幫襯咱，
And may God help us,
咱唔是建立團契嘅組織，
for we are not building fellowship organizations,
係建立這個團契組織裡面嘅生命。
but rather we are wanting to build the life within that fellowship organization.
你就有這個團契希臘文叫做 koinonia。
You know this word fellowship in Greek, it's koinonia.
koinonia 嘅意思是真豐富嘅意思。
Meaning of koinonia is very, very abundant,
咁即係我
very rich.
我用一等嘅先生嚟講到 what is fellowship。
Perhaps I'm going to spend one service, in one meeting in talking about what is fellowship.
即係 koinonia 或者 fellowship，或者翻做 communion。
Koinonia can be translated as fellowship. It can also be translated as communion,
sharing、
sharing,
helping，
helping.
即真係相，所以這個真真豐富嘅意思喺裡面。
Such rich meaning within it.
當我笑嘅時陣，
And when I reflected on it,
中國人有一句話有淡薄接近這個意思。
I reflected on this, and I thought of this Chinese saying that's quite close to what the meaning of this.
就有人讲有福同享，有难同当。
There's this saying in Chinese that you share blessings with one another, you bear each other's burdens.
这是讲咱的好朋友的中间，
This is talking about that amongst good friends.
那是有福同享，有难同当。
If there's blessing, we share it with one another. If there's a burden, we carry it
这
together.
就有淡薄 fellowship 的意思。
There's a little bit of meaning of fellowship within it.
无还是无 compete 呢？
And of course, it's not a complete definition either.
保罗有讲一句话，
And Paul said something.
伊讲甲喜乐嘅人撒甲喜乐，甲悲哀的人撒甲哭。
Rejoice with those who rejoice, and you mourn with those who mourn.
这是 fellowship 的意思
And。that's also the meaning of fellowship.
所以讲 fellowship 是一個真正豐富嘅物件，
So fellowship is something that's very rich.
叫上帝祝福咱。
May God bless us.
萬咱今日靠着主嘅恩典，
Let's hope that in this year, by God's grace,
咱有但建立一個團結生命嘅教會。
we will be able to build a church with fellowship life.
喺你嘅 fellowship 你冇嘅團契嘅裏面，
In your fellowship, whatever fellowships you
喺
may
你
belong
嘅
to,
small group 嘅裏面，
in your small groups,
咱是就有團結生命。
we will truly have the life of fellowship.
你家己會感覺完全冇生
And
意，
then you yourself will feel that it's so different.
叫上帝幫助咱。
May God help us.
咱嚟祈禱下。
Let's pray. 天父，阮要直接来獻上阮的感恩，感謝上帝，你伫這個年頭再佫一擺直接來用主的僕人的話語來提醒阮，上帝，阮實在是需要着伫教會這個方面，實在有一個真正平衡的發展，互阮實在眾兄弟姊妹，眾同工攏佇遐來協調今仔日的信息，互阮會通相合來建立阮的教會。互阮伫即個方面平衡的發展，特別今年是阮的團契的年，天父啊，你幫助阮實在過着一個真正美滿的團契的生活，互阮兄弟姊妹實在會通伫遐彼此分擔、彼此相挺、彼此相關心關懷、彼此幫助，實在阮會通看到迄款佇主內彼此相挺迄款的關係，親像主耶穌伫遐所講的，人會認出阮是主的門徒，當阮伫遐彼此相挺，主啊，你幫助阮，你祝福阮，你保守阮，安尼祈禱是奉主耶穌基督的聖名，
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.